The afternoon sun filtered warmly through my balcony, casting light on the maple trees lining the street below, their leaves rustling with a faint autumn scent. My apartment in Portland had always been my quiet sanctuary, its walls adorned with old family photos and the distant chime of church bells from St. Mary's. At 71, my routine was predictable coffee in the morning, some time spent knitting, and then settling into the rocking chair in the living room to watch life unfold outside the window. That day, without warning, I heard the sharp click of heels on the staircase. Before I could rise from my armchair, the door swung open, and in walked my daughter, Evelyn. She burst in like a whirlwind, dressed in a crisp navy blazer, her dark sunglasses perched firmly on her nose, and a cloud of expensive perfume announcing her presence. She didn't offer a kiss or a gentle touch on my cheek, just tossed her purse onto the dining table. "Mom, don't ask questions. Just wait here. I'll be back." Her tone was curt, as if addressing an assistant rather than the woman who raised her alone since she was 5. I watched her smooth her sleek hair behind her ear and march out with the same commanding rhythm of her heels. I sat still, a nagging sense that something was off. That's when I saw it, a plain white envelope on the table, stamped with a notary seal in one corner. Documents. It read in typed letters. A knot tightened in my stomach. My fingers trembled. But I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Something inside me knew it wasn't good news. I stepped onto the balcony, craving air from below. Her voice drifted up, muffled but clear through her phone. "Everything will be finalized tomorrow. The house will be ours." My blood ran cold. My house. My only refuge since Walter passed. Ours. Who else was included in that word? I leaned against the railing, my heart pounding as if I'd just run up every flight of stairs in the building. The sound of a car engine broke the hallway's silence. Inside, the envelope sat on the table, harmless, yet menacing. While Evelyn's perfume lingered among memories of a lifetime, I sank into the armchair, the air in my own home suddenly heavier, and waited, unaware that this silence was the start of something that would change my life forever. When the door closed behind Evelyn, the echo of her heels lingered in my mind. The apartment fell into an odd silence, not the calm of my quiet mornings or the peace of my reading nights, but a thick, suffocating stillness. I stood for a moment, listening, hoping she'd pop back in, laugh, and say it was a joke, that she was here to spend the afternoon with me. But all I heard was the hum of the fridge and my racing heartbeat. To steady myself, I went to the kitchen. I started making a pot of beef stew, the kind I used to cook for Evelyn when she was little. I soaked the beans and pulled out the smoked paprika. The warm aroma filled the apartment, and for a moment, I clung to the hope that she'd return, smell the stew, and smile like she used to as I stirred the pot. Memories crept in like steam. I thought of the 30 years I spent at the cannery, my hands freezing in winter and sticky in summer. I remembered the night I sold my wedding ring to pay for her college tuition, telling myself every sacrifice was worth it if she succeeded. I recalled her teenage promise, spoken through tears when she couldn't afford the dress she wanted for a school dance. "Mom, one day I'll pay you back for everything." I leaned against the counter, feeling those words drift in the past, like the steam from the stews we rarely shared anymore. Then my phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up and saw a bank notification withdrawal authorized $50,000. A sharp pain shot through my chest. It was my account. I hadn't made any transactions that day. I stared at the screen, waiting for it to explain itself. As the stew's aroma mixed with a bitter pang of suspicion, I turned off the stove slowly, set the spoon on the counter, and returned to the living room. My home, my refuge for so many years, felt colder now. The envelope still sat on the table, like a silent guest demanding attention. And I knew I couldn't ignore it much longer. The apartment's silence became unbearable. It felt like the walls were nudging me toward the living room, where the white envelope waited like a challenge. My hands shook as I reached for it, but something else caught my eye. Evelyn's sleek leather wallet. She never left it out of reach. It was practically an extension of her. I picked it up carefully, as if it were forbidden. Inside, I found glossy gold credit cards, her name embossed in elegant script. There was also a neat stack of bills, arranged with the precision of someone who calculated every move. A weight settled in my stomach, a mix of curiosity and guilt. But my fingers kept searching. At the bottom, I found a smaller envelope with my name on it. I opened it to reveal cold, impersonal documents my house mortgaged in Evelyn's name, bank statements showing my pension funneled into her account for months, and a detailed plan to sell the apartment and move me to a private nursing home in Salem. Each line burned as I read. It was a betrayal disguised as paperwork. A strange vertigo hit me, as if the floor had shifted. Then I noticed something else in the wallet's side pocket, a USB drive. I plugged it into the old laptop in the living room, and Evelyn's voice filled the air. Just get her to sign whatever. She can barely read without her glasses. The words thundered in my chest. It wasn't a mistake, it was a plan. My own daughter spoke of me like a burden to be managed. I closed the wallet and sat in the armchair, clutching the documents like they were burning coals. Betrayal smelled of expensive perfume and notary ink. I took a deep breath and looked around the apartment I'd lived in my whole life. The photos we hung with laughter, Walter's rocking chair, everything felt foreign, like it no longer belonged to me. I stood slowly, feeling something inside me break, and realized I couldn't wait for her to return and erase the rest of my life. I cried silently, the documents heavy in my lap, until my tears dried on their own. A deep exhaustion settled in, not just from age, but from years of disappointment piling up like dust. Then, suddenly, something sparked inside me, an unexpected ember flaring in the dark. If she can decide for me, I can decide for myself. I rose with a determination I hadn't felt in decades, my joints creaking, but my resolve firm. In the bedroom, I opened the closet and pulled out my small suitcase, the one I'd used only once for a trip to the Oregon coast with Walter. His laughter still vivid in my memory. I brushed off the dust and packed without hesitation 2 simple outfits. My favorite photo of Walter grinning in his baseball cap, and my small St. Christopher medal, a quiet companion through tough times. As I folded the last shirt, my phone pinged. A bank email transfer attempt, $201. Confirm to authorize. I stared at the screen, and instead of fear, a smile spread inside me, warm and defiant. For the first time, I was one step ahead of Evelyn's schemes. I grabbed her wallet with resolve, its leather cool against my palm, and dialed a taxi company. Destination. Ma'am, the operator asked. Portland International Airport. Please, I replied, my voice steady, waiting at the building's entrance. The cool evening air brushed my face, but I felt no fear, only a weightless freedom. Every minute without Evelyn's knowledge was like reclaiming years stolen from me. When the yellow taxi pulled up, my heart raced, not with anxiety, but with an unfamiliar thrill, electric and alive. I climbed in, clutching my suitcase and the wallet to my chest. Through the window, I watched the maple trees of my Portland street fade, their leaves blurring with the echoes of memories that had tethered me for too long. I breathed deeply as the car sped away, the city lights dimming behind me, and knew my escape had just begun. The taxi dropped me off at the terminal with a knot in my stomach. I couldn't recall the last time I'd been in an airport, clutching my suitcase in one hand and Evelyn's wallet in the other. My legs wobbled for a moment, but I pressed forward. At the airline counter, I took a deep breath. 1 ticket to Key West, business class, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. The agent typed for a moment and asked for my card. I slid it across the counter with cold hands. For a second, the screen flashed. Transaction not recognized. Please retry. My heart pounded in my temples. I imagined alarms, police, humiliation. But the agent smiled politely and asked me to try again. I swiped the card once more. And this time, the beep of approval rang like a bell of freedom. With the ticket in hand, I felt a surge of energy. I passed through security without looking back. On the plane, I settled into the wide leather seat of business class. The scent of new leather enveloped me, and a flight attendant approached with a tray. "Would you like a glass of champagne?" I gripped the glass, the bubbles tickling my nose as I sipped. A lifetime of following rules. Today, I fly for me, as the plane taxied down the runway. My chest swelled with a mix of fear and exhilaration. I closed my eyes during takeoff, and when I opened them, Portland was shrinking beneath the clouds, the maples reduced to specks, my street a fading line in the distance. For the first time in 71 years, I didn't know what tomorrow held, but I felt a new life beginning. As the plane soared into the blue sky, so did I, leaving behind the woman who had waited too long. Landing in Key West, the salty Atlantic air wrapped around me like an embrace I didn't know I needed. The sun shone with a different warmth, and the scent of hibiscus mingled with the sea, making me feel I'd truly arrived in another world. I took a taxi to a small hotel in Key West, facing the waterfront, where my room's window framed the waves crashing against the rocks. I left my suitcase in a corner and, for the first time in decades, felt no urge to tidy or clean. I just breathed deeply. That afternoon, I wandered into town. My feet led me to a colorful boutique, where I bought a coral sundress and new sandals without overthinking. They weren't practical or cheap, and that made me smile. For the first time in my adult life, I bought something just because I loved it. I continued to the Key West Historic Seaport Market. Stalls overflowed with tropical fruits, mangoes, papayas, sweet bananas I'd never tasted so fresh. A vendor offered me a slice of pineapple, its juice dripping down my fingers as I felt something inside me loosen. It was like biting into a piece of new life. Back at the hotel, my small purchases in a paper bag, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out and saw Evelyn's name on the screen. I hesitated before answering, then stayed silent as her broken voice came through. "Where are you?" "Mom, you can't do this to me." I ended the call without a word. My silence now carried more weight than any lecture or reproach. I sat on the balcony, watching the ocean, and felt a peace I hadn't known in years, a peace born of distance and my own choices. That night, I slept with the window open, the Atlantic's rhythm lulling me, as I began to understand that my real journey was just starting. The days that followed became a symphony of notifications, my phone buzzing incessantly with calls, texts, and voicemails. At first, Evelyn's sharp commands cut through in her familiar cold tone. "Come home right now." Then came veiled threats, laced with impatience. "If you don't return, I can't be responsible for what happens to your house." Finally, A raw plea emerged, the trembling voice of a child who'd forgotten how to apologize. Mom, please, without you, everything's falling apart. I read and listened from the balcony of my new rented apartment, a small haven facing the sea, where the waves' steady rhythm cradled my newfound freedom. The Atlantic stretched to the horizon, each wave crashing against the rocks, a reminder that I'd survived worse than loneliness, betrayals, sacrifices, years of being unseen, slowly, my life filled with gestures I'd never dared embrace. I joined a pottery class in the neighborhood, where my hands, once bound to cooking and cleaning, now molded clay with purpose. The first time I painted a small blue vase, its curves gleaming under the kiln's fire, I felt I was painting a new version of myself, vibrant and unapologetic. Mornings, I sat at a checkered tablecloth cafe in the town square, watching people pass without glancing at my watch. Each sip of coffee, rich and unhurried, tasted like a quiet victory. I smiled at strangers, their faces warm with stories, and eavesdropped on conversations, feeling the world expand beyond my old apartment's narrow hallway. As Evelyn's calls fell like relentless rain, I realized I'd turned the game around without raising my voice. I was no longer the obedient, available mother, tethered to her demands. My silence, once a source of pain, had become my strongest response, a shield and a statement. That afternoon, as the sun gilded the white facades of Key West and the sea breathed calmly, I felt the future was mine to shape. The past, with its weight of betrayal, lay far behind, waiting for me to decide if I'd ever revisit it. On my own terms. Mornings took on a new rhythm. I no longer woke expecting calls or reviewing to-do lists for others. Now, I walked to the marina with my basket of freshly painted ceramics. I joined a group of older women selling crafts to tourists, beaded bracelets, embroidered tablecloths, clay figurines. Amid laughter and tips on attracting buyers, I discovered I could feel useful without carrying anyone else's burdens. There, I met Dolores, a 68-year-old woman with sun-kissed skin and eyes full of stories. A fisherman's widow. She seemed to know everything about the island. One day, she invited me to her kitchen and taught me to make key lime salsa, grinding garlic, peppers, and cumin with steady motions. The tangy, warm aroma filled the air. She grinned as I tasted the sauce on a piece of bread. Now you're a little bit of a Key Wester, Clara. I felt a pride I hadn't known in years. Standing there, hands stained with lime, I thought, for the first time in 71 years, my life belongs to me. One afternoon, as I watered my geraniums on the balcony, my neighbor Rosa called from hers. Clara. I turned on the TV, and there you were. Well, almost. I leaned over, curious. Rosa turned up the volume. On the screen, a news anchor discussed a family scam in Portland, showing images of documents and empty offices. They named Evelyn Marshall as the mastermind of a financial fraud. I stood still, feeling a mix of surprise and relief. I didn't celebrate her downfall, but I couldn't help thinking the world was quietly setting things right. That night, as the sun sank behind the Atlantic and the air smelled of salt and fresh bread from the marina, I realized my silence and absence had opened the door to a new chapter, one no longer overshadowed by my daughter. 6 months passed like a salty breeze, each day a quiet gift. Mornings, I watered my geraniums on the balcony of my small seafront apartment, watching the Atlantic mirror the sun's glow as seagulls carved paths across the sky. My life had settled into a simple, full-rhythm pottery at the marina, walks along the beach's edge, leisurely coffee in the morning light, and the unshakable certainty that I owed no one an explanation. That morning, the mail carrier knocked with a certified letter. My heart skipped at the sender's name, Evelyn Marshall. I opened it with steady hands, no longer trembling. The paper crisp under my fingers. Mom. It began, in handwriting that seemed smaller, humbler, almost fragile. I shut down the company. I lost everything. But the worst loss was you. I won't make excuses. I just want to apologize and say I'd like to meet the new woman you've become. The woman who could live without me. I stood still, the sea breeze ruffling the letter's edges. My gaze drifted to my red geraniums, their vibrant petals swaying. Then to the distant market, its hum blending with the marina's sounds, my daily music now. I thought of how my days had transformed. My days now taste of salt and freedom, not tears and scraps. Leaning on the railing, I felt a mix of tenderness and distance, like waves lapping then retreating. There was no hate, only a quiet certainty I was no longer the woman who traded sacrifice for love, hoping for scraps of affection in return. I went inside and set the letter on the table, beside a blue vase I'd painted last week, its curves catching the light. Evelyn's voice, once so commanding, now felt distant, an echo from another life. I breathed deeply, the horizon stretching wide before me. I knew I'd eventually decide what to do with her words. But first, I wanted to savor another afternoon that was mine alone. As the sun dipped over the Atlantic, my silence remained my best response, a testament to my reclaimed life. My days found a rhythm that felt truly mine. Mornings, I walked barefoot on the damp sand, letting the Atlantic's cool foam wake me, its rhythm syncing with my heartbeat. The salty breeze carried away old burdens, leaving only the present. I attended pottery classes, where my hands, once bound to routine, shaped vases and plates, each curve a piece of my new life, etched with purpose. Afternoons, I opened my small craft stall at the Key West Marina. Tourists paused to admire my blue and coral-painted pieces, drawn by their vivid hues. I spun tales about the sea and the islands, weaving stories of shipwrecks and starlit tides. Some bought my work, others just smiled, their eyes lingering. I no longer needed their approval to feel whole, but their warmth fueled my quiet joy. One morning, the mail carrier arrived with a bank-sealed envelope. I opened it without fear, a notice of fund reimbursement. Restitution for proven fraud, $250,000. A shiver of silent justice ran through me. The money Evelyn tried to take, along with my life, had returned without my lifting a finger. It felt like the universe righting a wrong, restoring what was mine. I didn't consider returning to Portland. Instead, I strolled the waterfront, the sun warming my shoulders, until I found it a small white house with green shutters, facing the sea. Its balcony, kissed by salt air, was perfect for geraniums. I bought it without hesitation, signing the papers with a steady hand. As the ink dried, I felt a cycle close. No need to revisit the city where I was invisible. That night, as the sun painted the ocean gold, I leaned against my new home's window frame. Waves crashed against the rocks, their roar echoing my resolve. I don't need to close cycles in the city where I was invisible. My home is now where I learned to exist for myself. My phone buzzed another call from Evelyn. I watched it ring, its glow fading into the twilight. I let it go silent and smiled. Outside, the sea roared, its voice vast and untamed. For the first time in my 71 years, I understood that my silence was not surrender. It was freedom, hard-won and wholly mine.